Okay, let's have a little talk today about epithelial tissues and how we identify them inside the body. All right, so our objectives for today are to look at the different cell shapes, how we sort of identify those, what you're looking for underneath the microscope. We're then going to talk about different layer names when it comes to epithelium and what each of those different layer names mean. And then last but not least, we're going to look at the different types of epithelium, and we're going to look for the visual clues that will help you to identify each of the different types. All right, let's first take a look at cell shapes. So there are three potential cell shapes that we're going to be talking about. And the first one we saw in our med-term course. So if you want to take a look at those videos and to see what those words mean, please reference our med terminology course for tissues. However, the first one we're going to take a look at is squamous. So squamous refers to being flat, plate-like, very short, and very oval in shape. So if you see this very short, not tall cell, and it's a nice true oval, you're probably looking at a squamous cell. All right, next we're looking at a cube or a cuboid shaped cell, and it's just what it sounds like. It is a cube shape, so it's very square. The one thing you're going to look for if you're looking underneath a microscope or you're looking at an image, the nucleus in the center, which here is that darker brown color, will be very large and almost centralized right inside of that cell. And our third shape is a column cell or a columnar cell. They're very tall and thin. So think about a column in architecture, very similar to that. And the nucleus tends to kind of sit towards the bottom of that. So this is a nice column cell. Oftentimes you're going to see these little hair-like projections like you see with this image here. So you see these nice tall column cells. And then you see all of these little hairs sticking off the end. And those little hairs that stick off the end are called cilia. Those cilia are going to have a lot of different functions. They do move, so they do wave like a piece of hair as they go past. And we're going to see some different types of cilia on the different epithelial types we're going to take a look at in part 3. All right, next, let's talk about layers. And there are some particular terms that we use to describe the layers of the epithelium. All right, if your epithelial type contains the word simple inside of the word, what we're talking about here is just one layer of cells. So if you see the word simple, it should automatically say there is only one single layer of cells. The second potential term is the term stratified. So if you see stratified plus one of the shape names, we'll talk about what that means. But stratified refers to the fact that there is more than one layer of cells. So anything 2 plus would be a stratified type tissue. And the third type is called a pseudo-stratified. So while you kind of notice that stratified portion, right, as a word that we've just looked at, pseudo refers to being false. So it is a lot of weird shaped cells that are lined up. So it looks like there are multiple levels and multiple rows of tissues. However, it's really just one row of cells. It's just that the nuclei are kind of all over the place. And you can see this little image we've created here, that they're all sort of oddly shaped. And so it gives it the appearance of having multiple rows, but it's actually not. Okay, and then let's take a look at putting it all together. So in any epithelial type, you're going to have a combination of 2 of those words, and that is going to help to identify that type of tissue. So let's start with simple squamous. If you remember, right, simple told us it was just a single layer, so just one layer of cells. And the word squamous meant it was that flat, oval, plate-like sort of shape. So you can see here, it is a row of cells that is only one layer deep, very short cells. The reason to have this sort of cell inside of your body is it allows things to kind of sneak back and forth, right? Being a single layer, they're very small cells. Things like oxygen, right? Sugars can just go back and forth quite easily. So you're going to find this in places like your capillaries, right? You're going to want to get oxygen in and out. You're going to want to get sugar in and out of your bloodstream. And so this thin sort of tissue is really helpful for that. Next is simple cuboidal. So again, that term simple told us it was only one layer thick. And that cube shape, the cuboidal term, tells us it's those nice little squares, that cube shape with those nice large nuclei right in the center. So the purpose of having simple cuboidal is it absorbs or secretes some sort of object. You're going to find these a lot in the kidneys and glands. All right, next we have our simple columnar cells. So again, if you remember the word simple, same thing, one layer. But now we've got a column shape. And so that column, these are nice, tall, thin types of cells as they line up. These ones also allow for secretion and absorption. And they're often found in parts of the lungs like the bronchi, parts of the uterine tubes, and other locations where you need these much taller, wider cells. Simple columnar can also come with cilia. And if you remember back to where we looked at in the last section, cilia are those little hair-like structures that you're seeing off the end of the cells. So again, we still have the same single layer because we've got the word simple. They are tall and they're thin because we've got the word columnar. But when we say with cilia, what we refer to are, in addition to just being tall, thin, and a single layer, they've got those nice little hairs. Cilia helps to move things along, especially things like mucus, foreign objects, right, that start to get into the body. We see these a lot in the respiratory tract, right? We would not want to get things down into our lungs that shouldn't be there. So these little cilia help to keep it out. All right, then we have our pseudostratified columnar with cilia. Okay, so pseudostratified, if you remember, come with one layer, but it looks like many, many layers because of those odd little shapes. They are, however, these very tall cells. Those cilia help to filter out dust, right, as air goes by them. And so we find these primarily in the lungs, in the trachea, and parts of the respiratory system. Oftentimes we refer to this in a shortened version or an abbreviation we call PSCC for pseudostratified columnar with cilia. So if you see PSCC, that is what we're referring to. Okay, next is the stratified squamous tissue. So if you remember, stratified referred to being many layers. So stratified squamous is many layers. They are those squamous cells which are flat, oval, pancake-like, plate-like. Different texts will describe them different ways, but they're very small and short. These extra layers help to provide extra protection for your body. And so you're going to find these in places like the skin. You would not want a single layer of skin cells. They would rub off very easily, exposing you to the outside world. And so we want to have multiple layers to help protect us. Next, we have stratified cuboidal. So again, stratified tells us it is many layers, and the cuboidal portion tells us they are all cube-shaped cells. Their function, again, is to do a lot of absorption and secretion, mostly found in the glands, although these types of tissues are pretty rare. Next, we have stratified columnar. So stratified, again, refers to being many layers, so more than one. But these are those nice, tall, thin, long-shaped cells. They do secretion and absorption. And they're pretty rare inside the body. So the one location that you're really going to see these a lot is inside the male urethra, is the primary location for this type of cell. stratified columnar often comes with this extra cell attached. And you can see here that they're a little bit purple, almost teardrop shaped. And this is something we call a goblet cell. A goblet cell has a very fancy function. Okay, but the goblet cells happen to produce mucus inside the body. So whether they're with a simple columnar or a stratified columnar, if there is a goblet cell, okay, that is to help produce mucus inside of the body. And so you're mostly going to find this inside of the intestinal tract to help keep food passing through. All right, one that we haven't talked about yet, and so it's kind of a surprise here for you. But we have one last type of tissue that we should talk about, and that is transitional epithelium. So what you're going to notice here is that this is sort of different from all of the other ones that we have talked about. So there are many layers. I know we don't have the word stratified, but transitional is in fact many layers. But you're also going to notice that the cell shapes are all very different. And in fact, some will be a little bit squamous shaped or that nice flat cell. Some will be cube shaped, some more square, and some will be more columnar. And the function of that is to really allow for the tissue to move and stretch and to change shape as it needs to functionally. And so we find this a lot in the bladder in the urinary system. As the bladder fills with urine or is emptied, right, the shape of that, if you think of it like a balloon, has to expand and contract. And so if we don't have cells that can sort of move and shift shape, we're not going to be able to be functional. And so this transitional type epithelium is able to sort of shift shape based on how full or empty that urinary system is. All right, what did you learn today? You might want to click down below onto our purpose games and see if you can identify the different types of tissues.